Mike Brown, the former FEMA director.
Joining us here is the former FEMA director.
History, I think, was very unkind to you, my friend. Very unkind.
Mr. Brown, thanks for being with us.
This is Michael Brown Unplugged.
Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Michael Brown Unplugged. Glad to have you with me. Pardon the voice. I'm fighting this cold, and I can't seem to get rid of it. And, well, it is what it is. So this podcast is going to be a little top-heavy at the beginning on lawsuits. Yes, we got some good news on the lawsuit front. Back in March, President Trump signed a presidential permit to initiate the construction of the Keystone XL oil pipeline with a facility in Montana. Now, the building of all of that was delayed by a federal court and an injunction. But, of course, the green justice warriors and all the social justice warriors all went forward with their lawsuits against the construction based on all of the old permitting. But now, in a decision that may shock many here, a Ninth Circuit, yes, a Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals panel has struck down a key barrier to the construction of the project, arguing that it no longer applies after the Trump administration replaced a permit earlier this year. So last week, the court ruled in favor of the Trump administration and in favor of TransCanada Corporation's motion to dismiss the lawsuit. In the report, the story goes like this. The ruling sided with arguments that the old permit for the pipeline, which was replaced by the Trump administration back in March, is no longer valid, and therefore the injunction associated with it also no longer applies. That action alone hands a victory to the Trump administration, which has been fighting to finish construction of the pipeline, but it also opens the door to restarting construction of the pipeline itself, because that was halted in the courts last fall, in part because of failing to properly account for the cumulative impacts of greenhouse gases from the construction, blah, 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 right? So back in May, Trump signed a presidential permit as a way to jumpstart the delayed construction of the 1,100-mile pipeline. That order superseded a March 2017 order. So, for the avoidance of doubt, I hereby revoke the March 23, 2017 permit Trump wrote in the order. Now, I would make the case that Trump's foresight in removing the old permit should really dispel any notion that he isn't up to the job of being president mentally. But I digress. The ruling is a win for Americans who like copious amounts of energy and for Americans who actually like to work in the energy sector. Colorado, for those of you not living in Colorado, we're doing everything we can. I shouldn't say we. They are doing everything they can in Colorado to try to destroy the oil and gas industry. But no, at least in Montana and North Dakota and in Canada, it's moving forward. The pipeline would ship up to 130,000 barrels of crude oil daily from the tar sands of Alberta down through Montana, South Dakota, and Nebraska, and when it reaches Nebraska, it would then tie into existing pipelines to carry the crude to U.S. refineries. The ruling was this huge victory for TC Energy. That's a Calgary, Alberta-based company that wants to build the pipeline, though company officials have said it already missed the 2019 construction season because of court delays. Yes, we are a litigious society. So even though they've won the court case, it's really too late to start. I mean, when you start thinking about moving all the heavy equipment in, you start doing all the dirt work and everything else. We're talking about Montana and North Dakota, where pretty soon, I know it's only June, but before long, we're going to start facing, shorter days, and then the ground's going to freeze over again. But despite the ruling, it will be a while before the construction actually begins. Attorney Stephen Volker, who represents the Indigenous Environmental Network and the North Coast Rivers Alliance, said that he would request another judge's order to block the project if he thought there was a chance of construction beginning immediately. Representatives of half a dozen other environmental groups vowed to keep fighting in court and predicted the pipeline will never be built. Volker says, we should forget the underlying issue here. we should not forget the underlying issue here, global warming. Now, I don't know about you, but if you were in Colorado over the weekend, I happened to be in New Mexico over the weekend, it was colder than crap. Yeah, it was. In fact, I actually looked out on Sunday morning thinking there might be fresh snow on the Sangre de Cristos, but there wasn't. But anyway, going back to Volker, Attorney Stephen Volker, if you've sued Donald Trump and it's gotten to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals and they rule against you, it might be time to go home. Attorney Stephen Volker, who represents the Indigenous Environmental Network and the North Coast Rivers Alliance, said he would request another judge's order to block the project only if he thought there was a chance that construction might begin immediately. In other words, you know what they're going to do? They're going to wait until next spring when the oil and gas companies start moving all the heavy equipment in to start building the pipeline, and then bam, we're going to get another injunction. But then he said this, and to me, this is the money quote. We should not forget the underlying issue here, global warming. We're trying to save the earth. I wish the federal government would pay attention to the science and do its job. I also saw a story in Glacier National. Now, if you've never been to Going to the Sun Road in Glacier National Park, you really ought to go sometime. It is marvelous. It is actually, with all due respect to Rocky Mountain National Park, Glacier National Park is one of the most glorious places on earth. I mean, there are a lot of wonderful places on earth, but Glacier National Park is absolutely wonderful. I didn't realize, but the National Park Service had been putting up in certain localities signs where you could, you would walk up the trailhead and you would get to the end of the trailhead where there'd be these beautiful vistas where you would see the glaciers, like up on the Maroon Bells or something. And they would put signs up. Honest to gosh, they would put these signs up that said, "Gone by 2020. Well, apparently in Glacier National Park, they've been taking the signs down because the glaciers are no longer receding. The glaciers are actually growing. So rarely, if ever, do I say hats off to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. But in this case, hats off to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. But I'm not done yet. Oh, no. You probably don't you do remember Lois Lerner, right? And you do remember the Internal Revenue Service, commonly called the IRS. Well, the True the Vote versus IRS lawsuit has finally come to an end. It was like a great weekend for the end of litigation. And the end of that litigation is being seen as a really kind of a big victory for freedom, individual liberty, in that Lois Lerner saga in which conservative organizations, as you recall, were targeted and blocked from gaining tax-exempt status in order to keep them from being involved in the 2012 election. I know it's 2019 and we're talking about something that happened in the dark ages, 2012. But Federal District Judge Reggie Walton ruled in favor of True the Vote, even penalizing the IRS with extensive attorney fees. Now, if you lose so badly that you are awarded attorney fees against the government, you've won a hell of a victory. That ruling and the award of attorney fees indicates that throughout the case, the Internal Revenue Service displayed unconstitutional discrimination, displayed unethical behavior against True the Vote. And think about, all True the Vote does? It's a conservative organization that fights for election integrity. I would ask a stupid question. Who could be against election integrity? Well, now we know. The IRS and Democrats. So this decision marks the end of an almost 10-year battle that first began back in 2010. True the Vote. See, this is like going back and reading world history. 2012. Names that I had totally forgotten about. True the Vote's founder was this woman, Catherine Engelbrecht. Remember her? She was targeted by top federal government agencies. She was targeted by the Internal Revenue Service, the Department of Justice, the ATF, the FBI, OSHA, all under the Obama administration. They launched 23 audits, investigations, inquiries, constantly attacking this group. And all this group wanted to do was make sure that our elections had integrity. So back in 2013, True the Vote sued the IRS. They were trying to prove that the IRS's actions were unconstitutional prima facie, on their face. Meaning, Judge, if you just look at what these numbnuts, these yahoos did in the Internal Revenue Service, you really don't have to do any legal analysis. A fifth grader could tell that what they did was unconstitutional. Now, the court fees added up into the millions, and they actually devastated the only conservative voter rights organization in the United States. So Catherine Engelbrecht, the founder, said that at the outset of this case, I testified before Congress and swore that I would never retreat, I would never surrender. Calling Winston Churchill. Today, she said, I have fulfilled that oath. Thank you to all the citizens across the country who stood steadfastly beside us. We could not have done it without your support. Now, Judge Walton confirmed that what the IRS did was wrong. He said that discrimination on the basis of name, association, or political viewpoint violates a person's First Amendment rights. Now, I know it's the IRS, but the lesson for us is viewpoint discrimination. Discrimination on the basis of someone's name, their association, doesn't have to be their political association, just you're hanging out with these guys. You're hanging out with those gals. Can you say gals anymore? I don't know. I don't care. Discrimination on the basis of name, association, or political viewpoint violates the First Amendment. The reprimand, though, continued as he also ruled that True the Vote received a bad faith enhancement to its requested attorney fees. Meaning, okay, so True the Vote asked it to be reimbursed for all of their attorney fees. And of course, when the lawyers do it, they add up every conceivable hour, minute, second that they can find to include in the request for attorney fees. The judge said, that's not good enough. I'm going to enhance the request for attorney fees. True the Vote requested a recovery amount of $1.9 million in attorney fees. Now, before we get all excited about this, the excitement is this. The IRS and the federal government has just had its hat handed to them for using the IRS to target a conservative organization. They asked for $1.9 million. The Judge Walton, hasn't decided yet, but he did say that I'm going to look at everything, and what I'm going to order is going to deliver a message to the Internal Revenue Service. Can we get a hallelujah or an amen? Two really good cases that came to light over the weekend. The Ninth Circuit, I don't know, maybe it's the end of civilization. The Ninth Circuit actually ruled in favor of Donald Trump and said, yeah, build that stupid pipeline. And Judge Walton in the Federal District Court for the District of Columbia said, and IRS, you violated almost every aspect of this lady and her organization's First Amendment rights, and you're going to pay out the wazoo. Now, the only thing I could ask that would be better, and I should just shut up and be happy with what I've got, but the only thing I could ask for that would be better would be this, and that would be for the judge to impose sanctions on the lawyers themselves. No, not where the government pays it, because you and I are going to pay these attorney fees. Yeah, they're going to come out of the U.S. Treasury. But what would be even better would be fine the lawyers and don't let them get by with, like members of Congress do. Oh, yeah, I patted some woman on the butt or I made some sort of unwanted sexual advance toward her, but I got the taxpayers to pay for that? Nope. Shouldn't happen in this case. Taxpayers shouldn't pay a dime, particularly considering that it's the Internal Revenue Service. Now, on to something else, although it's really just as bad. They're communists. Let's just be honest. They are communists, and they're going to destroy America, and they're going to replace it with the same nightmarish form of tyranny that prevailed in the USSR, that currently prevails in Havana, prevails in Beijing, prevails in Venezuela, prevails in almost any communist socialist country around the world. This will happen as soon as they have the political leverage, and they're gaining leverage every single day, whether it be in schools or universities, wherever it might be, the media, the nightly news, Hollywood, and they largely control the cities. We had an election, I shouldn't say we, because I don't physically live in the city and county of Denver. Thank goodness I don't, because I would be moving out. But Michael Hancock was reelected to a third term as mayor, but that's no big news. I mean, here was a black man running against a white woman that was kind of somewhat of a social justice warrior herself, but nonetheless was outspent by a huge margin. And of course, Michael Hancock is in the pockets of all the developers and yada, yada, yada. I mean, I just don't care. I hate to say it, but I love Colorado. I really don't care much about Denver. But the other thing that mostly went unnoticed was the election of somebody to the Denver City Council by the name of Candy Sidabaka. Sidabaka? I don't know. I don't know. I didn't pay any attention. I don't care. She defeated former council president Albus Brooks. If you've listened to certain radio stations in this town, Albus Brooks is one of these guys that loves to go on the radio and talk about all the wonderful things he's going to do. Well, he got his butt beat. This is who beat him.
I don't believe that our current economic system actually works. Capitalism by design is extractive, and in order to generate profit in a capitalist system, something has to be exploited. That's land, labor, or resources. And I think that we're in late phase capitalism, and we know it doesn't work, and we've got to move into something new. And I believe in community ownership of land, labor, resources, and distribution of those resources.
Whoa, hold on a minute. Back up the tape. Did you hear what she just said? If you think that when I say that she's a communist, that I'm wound up on a Monday morning, that I've got a head cold, and I don't feel good, and I'm grouchy, you think I'm just, nope. Let's back the tape up all the way, because I want you to hear this again. Listen closely.
I don't believe that our current economic system actually works. Capitalism by design is extractive, and in order to generate profit in a capitalist system, something has to be exploited. That's land, labor, or resources. And I think that we're in late phase capitalism, and we know it doesn't work, and we've got to move into something new. And I believe in community ownership of land, labor, resources, and distribution of those resources. And so whatever that morphs into, I think is what will serve community the best, and I'm excited to usher it in by any means necessary.
By any means necessary. Communism, an economic system that is based on public ownership of property and control of the methods of production, and in which no person profits from the works of others. Back the tape up again.
Move into something new, and I believe in community ownership of land, labor, resources, and distribution of those resources.
Oh, I believe in community ownership of the means of production. by any means necessary, when she says that we need to usher this in by any means necessary, means that a democratic republic will be dispensed with the moment it has served its purpose. It means that rather than getting muffled by Google, Facebook, Twitter, and the social justice warriors that are all, wanting everybody else to get deplatformed, well, this is more permanent. Maniacs like this woman have infiltrated city councils throughout the country. I know many of you don't listen, don't live in Denver. But you've heard me talk about Detroit, San Francisco. You've heard me, I listened to a podcast over the weekend of a friend of mine who happens to live in Austin. Austin's turning into San Francisco. Denver's turning into San Francisco. Because maniacs like this end up getting on city councils. Demographics deliberately altered through immigration and welfare policy make the election of a yahoo like this not only possible, but in my opinion, make elections of people like this inevitable. Now, in many, if not all large cities, left-wing radicals are the dominant force. That's going to be a major factor in America's downfall. When you think about the trillions of dollars that we spent on nukes so that we would not have to live as slaves under communism, but communism's not going to be imposed from abroad. Communism is going to be imposed here.
I don't believe that our current economic system actually works. Capitalism by design is extractive, and in order to generate profit in a capitalist system, something has to be exploited. That's land, labor, or resources. And I think that we're in late phase capitalism, and we know it doesn't work, and we've got to move into something new. And I believe in community ownership of land, labor, resources, and distribution of those resources. And so whatever that morphs into, I think is what will serve community the best, and I'm excited to usher it in by any means necessary.
I'm excited to usher it in by any means necessary. Those of you who are students of history will be frightened by that phrase, by any means necessary. I don't believe that the Iranians are going to take us on. I don't think the Chinese or the Ruskies, for that matter, are going to send, B-1B bombers over to attack us. I really don't even think North Korea really wants to attack us. Why would they need to? We are destroying ourselves internally. We are electing yahoos like Candy Sidabaka, who believes in state control of the means of production and then the distribution of those profits, services, goods, whatever they are, the distribution of those goods and services by the state. She's on the city council of Denver, Colorado. And you wonder why I'm frustrated with this state? What's wrong with you people in Denver? What is wrong with you? Oh, and I forgot. There's another case, and I haven't talked about this case because it's convoluted. At the same time, it's actually quite simple. It is Oberlin College, Gibson's Bakery versus Oberlin College. So for the price tag of $11.2 million today, they've not reached the punitive damages phase yet. Oberlin College is going to find out what it means to unleash social justice warriors on a little family bakery. What did the family bakery do? Gibson's Bakery? They objected to persons of a certain pigmentation. They objected to them shoplifting wine. I know, it's shocker, right? I thought that, if you go back to the city council person in Denver, that thinks the state should control everything, well, we should just be giving the wine out to everybody. Gibson's Bakery was targeted by a bunch of dumbasses in the small college town of Oberlin. Social justice warrior students were dispatched like a bunch of flying monkeys out of my butt in an attempt to drive the venerable bakery out of business for being racist. For being racist, because people of a certain pigmentation were caught shoplifting wine, which, as I recall, the story's been going. This case has been going on for, I think, a year now. I actually think the dirtbags that stole the wine were convicted of shoplifting. But hey, what difference should that make? Oberlin College, by the way, it's in Ohio, will have to pay a nearby bakery more than $11 million in damages because it libeled the store, tagging it as racist, and then went even further and interfered with its business, according to a verdict delivered late Friday. The jury found the school, and the jury found that Oberlin's vice president and dean of students, Meredith Raimondo, guilty of libel after she allegedly helped pass out flyers claiming that the bakery was racist and had a history of racial profiling and discrimination. None of which was true. None of which was true. Now, the $11.2 million is only a down payment. Punitive damages could triple that. Now, already, Oberlin's heavy emphasis on social justice warriors has been costing it. And with luck, this story will end with the college suffering the fate that it attempted to inflict on Gibson's Bakery. Bankruptcy. Absolute, Chapter 7, liquidation, put out of business. At some point, and I know a good friend of mine is listening right now, and he knows that I'm on a tirade about higher education. And he's fighting the battle for higher education to make certain that, things like speech codes are a thing of the past, to make certain that, students actually do receive due process if they're accused under the student code of doing something wrong. But good grief, when you actually get in cahoots with the social justice warriors and you target a family-run business because 3 thugs, yes, I'm calling them thugs. You know why? Because they were shoplifting. Because they were shoplifting wine. How's that any different than Michael Brown shoplifting the blunts from the convenience store owner in Ferguson, Missouri? Michael Brown was a thug. These 3 yahoos were thugs. $11.2 million. Soon to increase to $33 million and probably attorney fees on top of that. Yeah, it was a good weekend. It was a good weekend for litigation. So Michael Bloomberg is back in the news. Now let's before we talk about what his latest target is, let's see, he's fought cigarettes, tobacco, salt, firearms, trans fats, soda, soup, food donations, baby formula, escalators, earbuds, styrofoam, sparklers, and even drinking sodas in Mexico. You know what Michael Bloomberg wants to do now? He wants to completely end the use of coal. Now, he doesn't hold a government position, but he wants to impose his malicious will the same way that George Soros does, with his money. Bloomberg has announced that he will donate $500 million to close all of the nation's coal plants by 2030. Now, what I'm about to say, I'm saying tongue-in-cheek. But remember when Barack Obama, as long as we're going back into ancient history, remember when he told Joe the plumber or whoever that was that, sometimes maybe you made enough money? Maybe sometimes you made too much money? Maybe Michael Bloomberg's got too much money. I could use a little money. Maybe if I go in the coal business, he'll come and shut me down with $500 million. He wants to shut all coal plants down by 2030. The Beyond Carbon Initiative was created to bypass the federal government and to work with states and utilities to phase out every last U.S. coal-fired plant by 2030. That's from their announcement. Now, before I go into the details of the announcement, when I tell you that I think, yes, there are battles to be fought at the federal level. Immigration, national defense, national security. Those are truly federal issues. But if you think that the vast majority of what is destroying this country is happening at the federal level, let me reread you this again. The Beyond Carbon Initiative was created to bypass the federal government and to work with states and utilities to phase out every last U.S. coal-fired power plant by 2030. Now, I don't know. I guess we're somehow expected to believe that this is somehow going to improve the weather. It's going to stop the climate from changing as it always has since the Earth was formed. Because he unveiled this new climate initiative during a commencement address at MIT. If you got a kid going to MIT, I don't know. I'm just saying. Bloomberg, Soros, Silicon Valley, all of them remind us that the government is not the only source of tyranny. Where there is money, there is power. And where there is power, there are scoundrels. And there are scoundrels who will abuse that power with their money. The price of liberty is eternal vigilance. And it's not always the elected officials that you have to fear. Sometimes you have to fear the lawyers. I don't think I've ever talked about this on the podcast before. I don't think I ever talked about it on radio either, but there's a Philadelphia lawyer, Emily Baker White, and she has a mission in life. Her mission is called the Plainview Project. The Plainview Project is right out of 1984. She's trying to sniff out police officers who have committed the horrendous sin and the horrendous crime of expressing an opinion on social media that is right of center. And then she takes whatever she's posted, treats them as thought criminals, and tries to destroy their careers. The group, now operating in Phoenix, flagged 179 posts by current Phoenix police officers, which, according to Plainview Project, claims promotes racism, bigotry, or violence. Now, some of the posts were memes that mocked minorities, mocked religious groups, including Muslims. So Police Chief Jerry Williams has already banished some of the cops to non-enforcement assignments and promises a thorough investigation. But the mayor, Kate Gallego, said this: there is no context in which these statements are acceptable. This city has absolutely no place for hate. Then a city councilman by the name of Sal DeCiccio said, much of this only rises to the level of hate if you're a liberal snowflake. And that's when the fight began. You know, the end goal of social media censorship is for each of us who has not, just drank the Kool-Aid. The idea of isolating anything that you say on social media is to isolate you, is to make you think that you're alone, that you're the outlier, and that, and that if you say something that even if you think it's funny, even if I think it's not funny, guess what? You're supposed to have, at least in this country, the right to express your opinion. And by the way, these are cops. They're government employees. They're entitled, I know, you and I are entitled to due process. And I don't know for a fact that the Phoenix Police Department is unionized, but if I had to bet $1 to a donut, I would say that it is. They're going to be entitled to due process. But that's not the issue. The issue is they've committed a thought crime because they've expressed opinions that either mock, make fun of, or in some cases may actually be considered hate speech. But you know what? I'll defend their right to hate speech just as I don't want to ban Louis Farrakhan. He is an avowed anti-Semite. Louis Farrakhan is one of the biggest race baiters in the country. Well, Al Sharpton, and then you got Louis Farrakhan, and then you got Jesse Jackson. I mean, the list just keeps going and going. I don't want to shut any of them up. I want all of them to express their anti-Semitism. I want all of them to express their hate, their bigotry. Because you know what? They have the right to say it. And I'm afraid we're reaching a point in this country where people don't believe that, where they want to shut up the Jesse Jacksons. They want to shut up the Louis Farrakhans. No, don't shut them up. Let them speak. I want to get a taxpayer relief shot in real quickly. This one comes to us from Houston. And this one attracted my attention. Well, let's just listen to the news story first.
It's breaking news at 5 o'clock, and tonight we are learning more about what led to this shooting. Again, here is the map of where this happened. Fox 26's Natasha Geigel has been at the scene all evening. She is live tonight with more details.
HPD tells us that this appears to be an unprovoked shooting that spanned 2 blocks during rush hour. And you can see detectives are still out here trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together. Now, according to HPD, this occurred around 4:30 this afternoon. They received a call about shots fired near a home on the 100th block of East 44th Street. A 32-year-old man was dropped off by a friend at his sister's house. When the friend exited the car, the man shot his friend in the yard. He then shot another friend and his own brother. He even struggled with his sister when she tried to grab the gun away from him. She was unsuccessful, and the man then shot at a pickup truck that was driving by. Thankfully, the driver was not injured. When police arrived, the man was ordered to drop his weapon, but instead threatened police with the gun. He was shot multiple times by Officer Joshua Steen, a first-year patrol officer in the North Division.
The tragedy in this event is that right after the holidays, his father actually witnessed his son. His sister witnessed this. It's very tragic that we don't know what's going on with this young man. We don't know if drugs involved.
Now, emotions were very high for the family who were here at the scene, as you could imagine, losing a loved one in this manner. Now, as for the 3 people who were injured, including the suspect's brother, they are all recovering in area hospitals, and they're expected to be okay. And as in most police-involved shootings, Internal Affairs and the DA's office are investigating this case. In Independence Heights, Natasha Geigel, Fox 26 News.
Now, what I find fascinating about this particular taxpayer relief shot, the guy that was doing the shooting, it is alleged that he is, or may have been, he's now deceased, he assumed room temperature at the scene, he may have been mentally ill. That may or may not be true. But let's just assume for a moment that it is true. So first you have to ask your question, how did somebody that is mentally ill come in possession of a weapon? But then second, you have to ask yourself, the mentally ill person has already shot several people, shot 3 people. When the popo arrives, he's already waving the weapon. They instruct him to put the weapon down. He starts to aim at the officers. They take him down. The father's upset. And I get it. The father's upset because his son's been killed. And his son very well may have been mentally ill. But my question to you is very simple. What were the cops supposed to do? I mean, for Pete's sake, this guy has already shot 3 people. He's already shot 3 people, including, I think it was a brother. And so now the cops have arrived. They're supposed to what? Just, hey, we know you're nuts. We know you got some mental health issues. We're just going to back away and let you continue to shoot other people? You see, sometimes when we hear about an officer-involved shooting, an OIS, we tend to always think, well, but couldn't the cops have done something else? To me, this is a classic example of where I would love to ask, okay, he's shot 3 people. He's threatening the cops. What do you propose that they do? Oh, let me get close enough to use a stun gun on you while you have a fully loaded weapon pointed at me. This is the insanity that I now think infects too many people when they think about what cops have to do, and the minuscule seconds that they have to make a decision. Don't try to second guess them. If a cop does wrong, we'll point it out. But for me, this is a great case to point out and just simply ask, well, what would you have done? He's already shot 3 people. He's now ready to shoot cops. Oh, try to move in with a stun gun? Yeah, you'd wet your pants too. Hey, thanks for listening to this abbreviated podcast, Michael Brown Unplugged. 2 favors to ask. One, obviously, is to go over to iTunes and subscribe. Leave a 5-star review if you're willing to do that. And if you have time to write a review, that's fantastic. But then I have another favor to ask. Apparently, to get on to iHeart, the iHeart app for podcasts, you need to have at least 100 followers. And last I checked, I had like 91, 92. I need 8 of you to get onto Spreaker.com, and follow the podcast. Get me above that 100 number. I'm still working with iHeart to try to get the approval process sped up, but anything that you can do to help me, I would greatly appreciate that. And then last but not least, go to michaelbrowntoday.com, michaelbrowntoday.com, and across the bottom of the website are all the places where you can listen to the podcast, subscribe on YouTube, follow me on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. All of those places are all at michaelbrowntoday.com. I'll talk to you again tomorrow.